I'm very comfortable in the world of print because that's about graphic design. If it's not in the digital space, it's usually in the printed realm. But the paintings were almost like, let's remove myself from that and go back to actually direct relationship with an artwork and me doing it with my hands. Came around for a number of reasons, actually. Primarily was actually I was getting further and further away from the work we do here, the commercial work, because I have a team that I work with. So I became more of a creative director, or I've become more of a creative director than a practicing designer. I mean, my software skills are next to none, right? So I work through collaboration, not just with clients, but also with the creative team. So at some point, I just got this itch to actually just take all of those elements away, just do something that required only me to actually output it. So my idea, my execution, my thing. And that's how the painting started. Actually, it was something to get back into kind of art college thinking, if you like. There's a few things to unpack there. First of all, I'd say my painting deliberately avoids doing what we deem to be called pop art, which is using pop iconography that's familiar to us in the commercial world. And usually when graphic designers do art, as it were, they tend to lean towards either kind of a variant to pop art, if you like, or they'll fixate on, say, typography, because that's kind of one of the key tools that we use, typefaces and lettering, that kind of thing. And I sort of thought, well, if I go in that direction, then I need to start to think about it in terms of content. You know, what do you write, as it were, if it's words, or, you know, if you're using kind of pop iconography, why are you putting this into the paint? What's the purpose of it? And really, I in a way, I went right back, further back into sort of like one of the key components of graphic design is composition. So I thought, oh, you know, actually, I'm going to strip everything out apart from color and composition and focus, you know, almost like Bauhaus way on the kind of fundamental elements and then build from there. So that's how the paintings came about. In terms of the symbols, yeah, of course, symbols have strange lives. And they're the one, maybe potentially, logos, symbols, trademarks, they're the one of the outputs of graphic design that may have longevity. Most of what graphic design, commercial art does is in ephemeral, whether it's print or digital or whatever. It serves a purpose of communicating in something at a point in time. Whereas a symbol, because it's a sort of like it represents a sort of the cherry on the cake of an organization, if you like, their flag, has the possibility of having a longer lifespan than a lot of ephemeral graphic art. So symbols, because they're a hang around, and quite often they lose their original meaning, they adopt new meanings, and that makes them kind of interesting, I guess, as cultural objects, but also objects that can be manipulated and used as content for art. I think given that everything is so much in the digital realm, and you know, with NFTs as being tokens of authenticity, and we're so bombarded. I mean, the world is so much more of a visual culture than it was, say, like 50 years ago, because of just our, you know, constant bombardment of images through our phones. And so we're much more visually sophisticated. And we know that this will continue to generate more and more with AI. So we won't know what is real and what isn't real when we look at a photograph, because the fakes are so good. So the idea of authenticity, I think, may be a really key component to judging what is a good and bad piece of content or art form. So if you dial it back to literally paint on canvas, if you like, it's a way of actually, a very obvious way of bringing authenticity back into the kind of the artistic process. So there's a kind of immediate kind of artist and artwork relationship, and not through the mechanism of all the complexities of what we see now in the digital realm. I think it's the only thing that becomes important is the human aspect, because everything else will be taken care of by technology. So that becomes the primary sort of authentic label for an artistic statement, if you like, if you're going down that route, to say, yeah, actually, I did this with my own hands at this point in time. And evidence of that gives it a commercial value, because there's only so much you can do with your hands and your eyes at any given point in time in an artistic career, right? So that limits, I guess, the output, which puts commercial value to it because it's because of its uniqueness. I think when you look for simplicity in all creative output, at least that's your starting point. I mean, you try and synthesize and reduce something so it communicates. I mean, that's the essence of graphic design, as it were. So you try and remove the noise so the message is clearer. Whereas art allows you a little bit of ambiguity because it's your own statement and you don't necessarily need it to be at the front of things. And the relationship between something that is content driven, that's message driven, and the audience, say in the commercial realms, is an immediate one that needs to be, and it has a short lifespan, if you like. Notwithstanding logos, which you build meaning into anyway. But with the painting, it's like, can you do something that's simple, but at the same time has, you can live with for a long time? And it's trying to understand that there is a balance actually between the simplified message, but also the longevity and of actually having something that reveals itself over time, or that appears to be simple, but maybe you find different relationships in it. So it's like slow cooking, if you like. It's a sort of, there's something to be said in a world where everything is accelerating. The news cycle is accelerating, completely out of our control, as it was. We're being bombarded constantly with content and messages. So to sort of actually to try and balance that with something that has simplicity at heart, but is simply like very, very quietly kind of has a longevity, one would hope, that you can live with, is actually quite needed in a way. Interesting, because we've been looking at the print and looking at screen printing, and as you would know, I'm very comfortable in the world of print because that's about graphic design. If it's not in the digital space, it's usually in the printed realm. But the paintings were almost like, actually, let's remove myself from that and go back to actually direct relationship with an artwork and me doing it with my hands. So then taking it back again into print is kind of an interesting journey. So it also goes full cycle, if you like. So then it was a matter of actually, can you get some of those qualities of the paintings, which look like prints, let's face it. I mean, they're very immaculately finished and very carefully done, because it's a meditative process. How do you but it's hand done, so how does you keep some of that quality in the print, which is a more mechanical process, but at the same time be true to the medium? And I think then it's really about the quality of the print itself, the ink on the paper, and how beautifully executed they are, actually, because it allows you to go a bit like, I mean, these days I think you can get such great pigmentation in the print itself, such great color. And I always think actually the print should do something that the paintings can't. So I couldn't reproduce the construction lines, for example, in my paintings. I mean, I could draw them in with pencil, but it's not the same. And the construction lines are the underlying kind of grid, if you like, where the compositions start. So then the prints actually allow me to actually then put those back into the compositions. They change. And then if we do something like a screen print, we can do that in the way that's got a physical quality as well. So there's a potential of, again, in a different print-making medium, to do something that's unique to that, that couldn't be achieved in the painting. So it's really kind of trying to work out what the strength of the medium is, and to maximize the kind of the qualities that it offers you. Yeah, and ultimately everything I'm doing here is graphic art, and so it's really about the formal qualities, form as much as content, and the content is actually so much wrapped up in executing it in a certain kind of form that that's where the story is.